Hello again, and welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I am Ben, and this over here is my father, Paul, and we are paranormal investigators, and this is our second episode in our case study series where we study cases, as the name explains. So, last week I mentioned, the last video I should say, we mentioned that we were going to talk about this Pennsylvania Triangle. Now, I have not been there, but my dad has twice, and we started this case about 6 months ago, I should say. Since I haven't been there, I'm going to ask questions, be for my edification and your edification as well. So, Dad, tell me about this Western Pennsylvania case. Give me an overview.
Good question, Ben. Actually, we're dealing with a case in western Pennsylvania, as you say, with a large tract of hilly, rural land with forests, fields, and farms scattered about.
That's a good alliteration.
Yes. Central Triangle we have been investigating is about 4 square miles, and the central core of that is about 43 acres so far. All right.
Mm-hmm.
This came to our attention by means of the interesting book written by William J. Hall, The Haunted House Diaries, which is based on our Litchfield, Connecticut triangle. Mm-hmm. All right, and the similarities were striking. So, the woman of the in the main house there, where they had been noticing some things happening in the area, wrote to Bill, filling out a questionnaire similar to the one we use. And I'll just introduce the case by quoting from what she said. It said, "We have spirit activity, UFO craft, and lights that are often seen. Gray aliens have been seen. There was a lot of Bigfoot activity, such as prints, tree knocking, high-pitched noises, and face-to-face encounter by a well-known, reliable source." That was an investigator from that area. And I continue with the lady's note here. "I have pictures of prints in the snow that no one can explain, magnetic energy that drains batteries, makes people lightheaded. We've seen that ourselves. A 12-foot by 3-foot portal or doorway was discovered in the family campground on our property. There are incidents of missing time in the campground. Her husband, Dan, that's the gentleman there, was almost knocked off his tractor when he drove into an invisible force in the campground that left a V imprint on his forehead."
I wonder why they still go to that campground.
I slept there last time I was there. We'll talk about that later. And I've seen evidence of this. He showed me the place himself, and he showed me pictures of the mark. Bill goes on, and he talks about, of course, the house itself was built in the 1960s, really not very old, not that far back. Mm-hmm. It was in the family for a long time. And the history of the place is rather interesting, because archaeological studies have been done here, because artifacts have been found. There's a whole collection of artifacts in this house, and you're going to be amazed once you see it. There's one in particular, a gentleman who was on the tractor that time, has been a tremendous source of help with this. He has a fantastic collection of not only projectile points, otherwise known as arrowheads,
Right.
or archaeological items, but also things that really are hard to identify. Perfectly round balls of stone. And the first thing I thought, maybe that's some sort of projectile.
Like a cannonball.
Or something, but
yeah.
it's the wrong size. And certainly much too big to be a musket ball. Okay.
Did he ever get them analyzed or no?
That's all in process.
Okay.
Okay. And there's also, the thing I'm thinking of, it looks like a melted piece of metal or something that's just some sort of machinery or something. I can't identify it. And again, we have photographs of all this stuff.
On top of the mass burial and such.
Yeah, it's everything is weird. And we have a Native American village dating to approximately 1200 AD. It's located by archaeologists. 160 graves were discovered about 150 feet from this house, and all the bones were removed. And I have to emphasize that these were not typical native burials. They seem to be haphazard, as if some disaster had occurred. There's some evidence that there was a meteor strike sometime in the 1500s. Now, that may have killed the natives who happened to be living on this hill, which was also a scene of, if you want to call it industrial activity. Projectile points were being made, tools were being manufactured there. We decided to take action on this, and Shane Searway and myself, Shane, very familiar to the listeners of our show. He is from New Hampshire, and he's a very good combination of a Blackfoot shaman and a paranormal investigator with his feet firmly planted on the ground. So we headed out there May 20th to 22nd of this year, 2016. And right away, we decided what we would do. We stationed ourselves in this large field above the house where a number of things had been seen. And sure enough, we got pictures of a lot of strange lights, We saw a few strange things, but nothing to compare with what we were going to see. A number of local people who live in this area have reported many, many things, as the lady reported in her communication. Shane was also able the next day to photograph daytime lights in some daylight objects, at least in the sky, that we're still looking at. And what was interesting was that we went up later in that day, in the afternoon, to the area where the meteor impact had apparently occurred. And as you know, I have a sort of a metal allergy.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't even wear my wedding ring, which was eaten by a chicken 30 years ago anyways.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's true. So in this hill are all sorts of iron fragments from this meteor. And all of a sudden, I began to kind of shake, and my heart started to pound, and I said, what the heck's going on here? This usually doesn't happen to me. But not that happened, and then we found a Bigfoot. It could have been a Bigfoot print, very clear toe marks, larger than my feet, which are pretty big, and we have photographs of that. In the meantime, I went down to the house to sort of recover, the other house to sort of recover from this. I slept for 2 hours, actually. I was fine when I woke up. But Shane decided to go down in his truck to this campground area, which is kind of down below both of these houses. So Shane was sitting in his truck, and up between two trees, perhaps 200 feet from where he was, he saw all of a sudden a large, black, hairy figure. And he assumed it was a bear, because there are bears around here. So he started up his truck, and he took off up toward it. And it took off to the right, and then it was raining at this time, but still very clear, broad daylight. And he could see the arms kind of long and swinging back and forth as this thing ran. And 3 deer were flushed in the process and ran off in different directions. Shane got out. It had disappeared, this thing. Shane got out and measured this, and he could see up toward the sign of the no trespassing sign on a tree. On the bottom of it was about 1.5 feet taller than he was, and he's 6 feet tall. Mm-hmm. So that was quite the event. Okay, trail cams we had established at that point. We'd put them in different places. There were some interesting things at night, but they seemed to be just animals. There were some odd kind of blobs of fog or light that were not like ground fog, but in areas where Bigfoot had been reported by a number of people. Among these Bigfoot sightings was one man who lives in the area who was walking just along the tree line in this area, and he heard a thump behind him as if something had fallen out of a tree. Mm-hmm. And he turned around, and there was an ape-like creature. He didn't call it Bigfoot. Some sort of creature that was hairy, kind of staring at him, and of course he got out of there in no uncertain terms. So you name it, it's as in a typical flap area, you name it, it happens here, including things that really don't have any name yet. Okay, so Shane and I returned on September 16th and 18th, just last month from when we're broadcasting here.
Yeah.
And we took turns monitoring certain places at different times. So I took our truck up to the field above the house, and I happened to, it was a chilly night, but it was very, very bright. The moon was full. This is September 16th, 2016, Friday night. And as soon as your eyes will get used to the darkness anyway, but particularly when there's brilliant moonlight, I mean, it's like daylight.
Yeah.
So as I say, it was chilly. I put down the driver's side window of the truck, and I left the passenger side window up because I was expecting strange lights again, and things like that to appear on the ground and perhaps in the sky. But of course, you'd think I would know after 46 years of doing this that the things you expect to happen never happen.
Right.
It's always very unexpected. So all of a sudden, out the right window of the truck, which was closed, I caught sight, and it was it was crystal clear. It was we found out the next day, maybe 300 feet away, not right next to me, but close enough to be seen very clearly, a 2-legged figure, brown, hairy, walking, and I could distinctly remember the massive knees moving up and down, walking up toward the center of this field. And I happened to see as well the head. It looked as if it was kind of bowed a little bit, as if it was looking for something, walking very slowly. So you'd think I would be shocked. I felt, it was inexplicable, a feeling of absolute peace, and I felt privileged. Mm-hmm. So I said, I snapped a picture with the infrared camera out the cold window of the truck. Obviously, there's not going to be any heat signature. So you remember, we're a little new to this Bigfoot stuff.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm going to get out. get out very slowly. I had already lost sight of it at that point, but there was some movement. And your mother called just at that moment. I mean, it was the closest I ever came to divorce your mother. Okay, so it was long gone by that time. But then, about 5 or 6 minutes later, these lights started to shine up from the other side of the field into these trees, and they moved around, and they looked like ordinary spotlights of some kind. Then it stopped, and at this point, I didn't want to drive over there because I didn't know if there were any crevices in the field or whatever.
Yeah.
In the truck. So I stayed until after midnight. Nothing else happened, and I drove back down. Well, the next day, Shane and I went up to the field, and we have a video of Shane reenacting the path that this had happened. And before he even did that, we found a path, a large two-legged something had come up from the bottom of the hill, up from the woods, toward the middle of the field, and then it turned around and gone back. That night, we were able to have a neighborhood meeting. There were nearly 20 people there, all of whom lived in the area and all of whom had their stories. When I told the story of my experience the previous night, a hand went up, and a woman said that was me with the spotlights. She and her daughter said, we heard something large moving through the field, and we went up to see what it was. I mean, they weren't afraid. They're used to this sort of thing all the time. So presumably, they heard what I saw because it was at the same time.
Right.
So I suppose you could interpret this as corroborative evidence that there actually was some kind of a large thing. And again, we never make any claims. We tell you this is what we saw, this is what we have on evidence for, or film, or whatever, or testimony about. Make your own decision. But in my personal opinion, I think I very well may have had a Bigfoot sighting, particularly because of the feelings that it generated.
Right. So supposedly there was a truck with men in it?
Oh, yes. That was that same night. Okay?
So this happened to Shane, right?
This happened to Shane. That was he was sleeping again in that RV down in the campground.
Yeah.
Okay, and he stayed up kind of late. And now there's a cornfield. There's the campground, line of trees, a little bit of woods, and then a cornfield on the other side. Mm-hmm. And he had a trail cam set up there. Okay, usually you get deer and maybe a bear and all that sort of thing. So all of a sudden he heard a truck coming down, with or a pickup truck, and two guys got out. He said there was an emblem on the side of the truck, and they're flashing, but they weren't looking at the corn. Sometimes the farmers will do that. They were looking at the line of trees in like our direction. The funny thing was that the next day when the trail cam video was checked, it never picked up the truck.
It's supposed to pick up all motion,
It
right?
picks up not just motion, anything. And it's infrared. So it picks up stuff in the dark. You see the glowing eyes of deer and all this, raccoons or what have you. So sure enough, this thing was right in front of it, didn't pick it up. So, I mean, we're still trying to figure that out.
You guys did see lights, right? Like that was also another thing. Like Shane definitely saw lights.
Well, there were lights, and another thing that happened to Shane was that the first night, now the night I had my sighting, Shane was sleeping down in the RV. He said that all night long it sounded like a conversation outside, going back and forth, and he described it at the neighborhood meeting. People said, that's how they talk to each other, presumably the Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
And because Bigfoot seems to be the most common phenomenon around here, along with the lights.
That's really interesting.
And one of the houses has a problem with shadow people, but it's also a house that, according to them, has lights appearing over it every night. And we did see some lights. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, this is all just beginning. And the next step is for you, sir, to come down with us over there to do your thing, and we're going to try to expand this. Now, at the neighborhood meeting, I gave a presentation about our experience in these flap areas. And I mentioned that we always find the military involved. Sure enough, there have been reports of very low overflights of this area for a long time now. The fellow who had the accident with the tractor and ran into the invisible barrier was reporting that C-130 aircraft have flown over there, some of them unmarked, which is very strange. And residue of some kind has been dumped, sort of a residue that he gathered some of, put it in his garage, and then it essentially deteriorated. So there have been also very low overflights by fighter aircraft, which is also very odd.
That is really weird.
People testified they had seen this with their own eyes, that there was an ultralight flying over the area, and some sort of fighter aircraft that was estimated that it was an F-18 flew under the ultralight. That's how low it was. And that's not even legal by military regulations or anything else. So, but again, many of the black helicopters that people always see. And then one of the things we're going to do when we go next is to check out an area that has been closed off by electric fences, and it just seems to be a house. So perhaps this might be the center of some sort of monitoring or activity by the government or whoever this is. I'm at times, not entirely sure this is the government doing it.
No. Well, I mean, we have no evidence either way,
We don't, and that's the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the way these things are set up.
So what do you expect to happen next? Because I've noticed since we've started and with the Litchfield flap, things sort of progressed in a very strange way as soon as we got involved.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was going on, we just didn't pay attention to it. Do you still receive like daily reports or anything, or?
Well, not daily, but yeah, there are regular reports from this particular couple.
Yeah.
Who are kind of the conduit of information, and everybody knows, like at the neighborhood meeting, to contact us through them, and that's been done. We have a possible abduction scenario that's going on. We have more Bigfoot sightings. There was a family with a 9-year-old girl just last week that had a sighting, a very clear Bigfoot sighting. And then I just got a report today that I haven't had a chance to read that involves more Bigfoot sightings. Now, the funny thing with this, Ben, and you'll notice this when you go there, is that this is not the Pacific Northwest with a gazillion acres of redwood or pines and all this. This is, as we said, a rural area with a lot of farms, but everything's scattered. There are scattered woods and this sort of thing, but there's no place for a large community of large mammals like that to live.
Yeah, it's only like, what, 40-something acres?
Well, 43 in the core that we've only had a chance to begin. This is going to expand as soon as you go down there with it.
Right.
But the point being that we believe, as do most of the natives we've talked to, that Bigfoot, in this case, is a multi-dimensional, or I should say a multiversal creature. They come and go across world boundaries. And how else do you explain the proximity of so many in an area that has so few woods?
Yeah.
At least large tracts of woodland. Where do they go? Where do they hide? So they must come and go. And there are reports by people that they see them and then all of a sudden they're gone.
Yeah.
And this sort of thing. No bodies are found. And this is common in the Bigfoot thing. And now again, we're new to the Bigfoot research, but it's been made necessary to get involved with it because that's the nature of these flap areas. So these are all questions that I think we're going to need to consider as this case progresses. We'd like to come down, expand the research area, have you do your thing. We need your eyes and ears on this.
Well, I guess that sort of does it for this case study, and it is going to be unfolding, so I can pretty much guarantee you that they're going to be parts 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6. Or please feel free to like and subscribe to our videos if you want more content. Don't forget about our show website. That's behindtheparanormal.com, where you can pre-order our upcoming book coming out in January. That's Behind the Paranormal, Everything You Know Is Wrong.
From Schiffer Publishing.
Yes.
You can available on Amazon for pre-order.
As well, yes. And the publisher's website, which is schifferbooks.com. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.